Good morning. Good morning. So our family moved into a new house a few weeks ago. I know there are people in this world, like my mother, who's here today, who find great satisfaction in the process of unpacking and sorting and getting all organized, but I don't think I will know what that is like in this lifetime. It is just a huge chore for me. So when I finally got around to unpacking half a dozen boxes of books, I figured I needed some trashy TV in the background to keep me going. And that is how I ended up getting totally sucked into a sorority mom's guide to Rush on Lifetime. Please don't judge me. So each episode in this show introduces two young women who are starting college at one of the big southern schools, Alabama, Georgia, Ole Miss, and to their families. These young women pour themselves, and their families pour thousands of dollars into preparing to Rush, which is kind of like a tryout or an audition for sororities. With the help of Rush coaches, which is apparently an actual job, they perfect their hair and makeup, their clothing, their jewelry, their posture, even their small talk. And then in the show, you watch them sweat through a whole week of parties and rejections and selections until maybe they're one of the minority who get a bid. So I found myself totally rooting for these young women and not really unpacking my books. These young women are so full of life, of individuality, of promise, but I also felt kind of sad for them. They are just racked with anxiety by this fickle process and devastated by rejection. And that's all before they ever set foot in a college classroom, because it happens the week before school begins. So for what is this? What do they do all of this for? To a person, their motivation was the same: belonging. They wanted friends, a community, sisters to walk with them through this very new phase of life in college. Sometimes the parents, especially the moms, were even more anxious. You could see these whole families putting their money and time and emotional energy into securing what was ultimately going to be a conditional welcome. You can belong here, but only if you mold yourself to certain expectations, pass a grueling audition, and literally pay your dues. So when I turned to the gospel reading this week, Jesus' parable about the dishonest manager in Luke 16, I thought, wait a second, is this Jesus channeling the Greek system? As you heard, a manager is about to be fired, and he panics. What will people think of me? Where will I belong? Who will invite me into their homes? So he calls the master's debtors and cuts their bills, hoping that they'll return the favor when he's out on the street. He's trying to buy belonging, to buy security, to buy friendship. And shockingly, the master praises him, and Jesus even says, use your worldly wealth to gain friends for yourselves, so that when it's gone, you will be welcomed into eternal dwellings. So on first read, that sounds a lot like those Rush coaches. Spend money on your image, spend money on your friends, spend money to secure your place in community. But when you place this parable alongside its neighboring parables of the prodigal son and the story of the rich man and Lazarus, I think the point becomes clearer. Jesus is showing us how important and fragile worldly belonging is, how quickly money and status can distort our relationships, and how desperately we scramble to protect our social worth when we feel that it's threatened. And that's why I kind of wanted to reach through the TV and say to these young women, you deserve to belong, but you shouldn't have to conform your way into community. You shouldn't have to pass an audition. The pageantry of Rush is really amazing, with the balloon arches and the bubble machines and choreographed dances, but it's not the key to real community. I think the church is meant to be the exact opposite of sorority Rush. The opposite of the manager's scramble for standing. Here, you don't have to look a certain part, you don't have to pass an audition, you don't have to pay dues or conform to any model image to find acceptance. Here, you belong because you are God's beloved. Full stop. But here's the thing. A welcoming community like this doesn't just appear out of thin air. Belonging isn't magic. This community is something that we cultivate. Welcoming is something we practice. Belonging is something we nurture. We invest in spaces to gather, in programming to bring us together, in teachers and ministers who help us grow and thrive, in technology for communication, and in opportunities to serve. That's why stewardship matters. Our pledges are not dues that buy us membership or belonging. They are acts of gratitude for the belonging we've already been given, and commitments to extend that belonging to others who still hunger for it. As I thought about this deep hunger for belonging that I saw in the sorority show and saw in the gospel reading, I was reminded of a quote from one of my favorite writers, Frederick Buechner, who said, "The place God calls you is the place where your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger meet." I'll repeat that. I think it's important. The place God calls you is the place where your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger meet. Most years, my pledge comes from that place of gladness. Gladness for this community, for the way it grounds me and challenges me and renews me. My gift to St. Mark's is the single largest charitable contribution I make each year. And sometimes, especially this year with our move and my company struggling because of federal budget cuts, it's not always easy to sustain that. But I'm going to do my best because I really believe that this is the community where my deep gladness can begin to meet the world's deep hunger. And friends, that hunger is growing deeper every day. We live in a time when our immigrant neighbors are not only being told they don't belong, but they're being hunted down and expelled. When transgender people are scapegoated, denied health care, and excluded from public service. When Black and Indigenous histories are erased from our classrooms and our national museums. And when the very lives of people who are homeless are publicly threatened on national television. The hunger is so real. But one way we can respond is by offering radical welcome to all who seek belonging, and by seeking deeper connection with our community beyond the walls of this church. That's what we do in our jail ministry, reminding people who have literally been cast out that they belong to God and to the wider community beyond the jail. That's what we've done for years with Hotel de Zinc, welcoming unhoused neighbors under this very roof. That's what we're doing as we welcome a new rector who is fired up about social justice, and as all of us continue the hard and joyful work of becoming beloved community. So here's where I want to end. I want to end with hope, because I think that's what our pledge campaign is really about this year. When we pledge, we are saying we have hope for this community. We have hope that God's love is stronger than fear, stronger than hate, stronger than exclusion. We have hope for the impact that we can have together. What would it look like if each of our pledges reflected the deep gladness we have for this place? What would it look like if our pledges reflected our desire and commitment to meet some of the world's deep hunger? I think it would look like hope made visible. Hope you can see, hope you can touch, hope that takes the shape of a community where everyone feels that they belong. So let us give from that place that Frederick Buechner describes, where our deep gladness meets the world's deep hunger. Let's give in a way that reflects our hope for this church, for our neighbors, for true belonging, and for the world that God is still redeeming. Amen.